Welcome back to another episode of Recovery APN.
Hey, Danny boy, how we doing?
I'm good. We have another really interesting and intriguing episode up next.
Yeah, Steven's got a very inspirational story.
Yeah, it was awesome to hear his perspective as someone who attended the Air Force Academy, went into corporate America, and then found APN.
Yeah, and all of our alumni stories, they highlight so many different, different backgrounds, different ages, people, in business and corporate, and athletes, and to hear his take on, his journey, and what APN has done for him and laying that foundation was great.
Yeah, it was like a new story for me, but a relatable story for me.
Yeah, the anxiety. I think a lot of people can relate to that anxiety piece, of just like the narrative we tell ourselves before an event and how that can kind of be crippling is it's interesting.
Yeah, and I love the tie-ins with his brothers.
Yeah, me too. Powerful.
It makes it very relatable to anyone with siblings or anyone that had family support. So I'm very, very excited for our fans to hear this because I think it's very relatable.
Yeah, it is definitely relatable, and excited for our listeners to hear this and hear Steven's journey, and enjoy.
Steven, welcome.
Welcome, Steven.
Hey guys. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on. It's great to see you. It's great to see like your face, and it seems that you're doing well, and we're excited to hear your story and hear what's going on.
Awesome.
So just to give you kind of a breakdown of kind of the structure of the podcast itself, we typically like to hear some background about like kind of what brought you to APN. Were there some specific hurdles that you were facing that you needed to get help from?
Yeah.
And then your experience at APN, were there individuals here that really helped you, or was there a certain experience that really helped you and motivated you here? And then what's life, since you left?
Awesome.
But I guess like the first question I have for you is this the first time you've been back to APN since you left?
Yeah, this is the first time. It was it's a little surreal actually. It was kind of like going back in time for a second. Remembering when my brothers dropped me off here, and wow, it just like sometimes it feels kind of like I never left in a sense.
Yeah.
And then in another sense, it's like it's been a really long time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We always ask our clients that question, right? like coming back up the mountain like butterflies, and usually the response, we get different responses, but usually it's it's excitement, it's like fear, it takes us back in time, it's all these kind of emotions that come over us, but it's healing to come back where you healed kind of deal, or started that process. So we're always excited to ask that question and get the response, and it's awesome, and it's good to see too.
Yeah, it's a lot of mixed feelings. It actually reminds me a little bit about when I revisit the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. I live there now, but I went to school there. It's a military academy, but it's like going back in time.
Yeah, I still get that feeling too coming up here. When I come up here, and I'm curious if you feel the same way, I feel like almost like a safety net. Like I'm like when I go back to when I go back to my parents' house, or when I come back to my house in LA, it's like I feel comfortable and safe when I'm here.
Home.
And I'm curious if you feel that.
I think I'm getting there. Yeah, I think I'm getting there. It feels really good to be here. I think there's been a part of me that's like, it's weird. I've been kind of reluctant to like jump in with all the different APN options and groups and stuff. And it feels good to be with you guys.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it feels really good to be with you guys.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, especially when you were sitting over there clearing the mechanism.
Yeah.
And we're like,
pre-game ritual, baby.
This is about sharing from the heart and being authentic and being real. It was like, I get it. Let's go. I love
Game
that.
time.
Love it.
So yeah, let's jump into kind of what initially brought you to APN. Like, was it 5 or 4 months beforehand, or was it going on like through your childhood and early teens? Like, what was like the
jumping off point? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd say these are things that I've been working through for a long time. Probably when I got out of the military, I was about 26, 27, and realizing like how much anxiety and depression I dealt with. Like I got into outside sales, and started having like panic attacks before sales calls. Like I'd be in like a parking garage of a hospital about to go talk to a neurosurgeon, and I would get that can't breathe, and that's when I became aware of it. And it's like, what is this about? Like,
where'd it come from?
What is this really about? And from there, like I started investing in therapy, coaches, and learning how to breathe, like box breathing, different kind of breath work that I could do to manage it. And then over the years, through different trials and challenges, ended up pursuing even more help. So it was years in the making to get here, years in the making. But 2022 was a really big year for me. I went to a retreat with a group. Aubrey Marcus leads it. It's called Fit for Service. And I went to a retreat in Austin, Texas. And that's where this journey kind of started to get me to APN.
Yeah.
I came out of a workshop where we had just very intimate sharing with different people. And I came out of it and I just was weeping and sobbing, screaming. And a woman there held me and I like cried for like 45 minutes. I woke up the next morning, was having different flashbacks of things that had happened in my childhood, and was just having trouble regulating myself. And I was just like, I can't deal with this right now. I don't have the time or the resources to go here. And I just had to kind of shut things off because, like, I got to go to work, you know? I got to fly.
Life.
I got to go. I got to go train a salesperson next week. Like, I can't sit in this for too long. But I did get into another mastermind with some guys where we had a therapist that was the one who facilitated this group. And at the end of this group, we went to Palm Springs, California, and we did some different, very intense work together. And through that, the same kind of things happened. I started having flashbacks, started shaking, started having trouble regulating my breath. And then the next week, I had to go train a salesperson in Reno, Nevada. And for 3 nights, I didn't sleep. It was pretty brutal. It was like going back to the past and being there and shaking. I remember calling one of the guys that led this mastermind, and we were just sitting on the phone and we're like, we're going to do box breathing together. And we're going to settle down. You're going to go take a shower, listen to some soft music, and be able to sleep. I couldn't sleep. I ended up texting my brother saying, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I'm in a really bad place. Like, I'm literally worried about even being able to just drive to the airport and get back. Just the way that I was functioning, like my body. And just going through security, people were looking at me because I was crying and I was shaking and having trouble controlling my breath. I got back to the Denver International Airport, and I couldn't find my car. Found myself curled up in a ball in front of the airport crying. And there was a lady that works in one of my clinics for our company, and I asked her to come pick me up. And she came and picked me up, took me back to Colorado Springs where I live, and she stayed with me until my older brother flew in that night. And we spent the weekend together, and I was just explaining to my brother what's been going on the past year. And he saw the condition and shape that I was in. He was like, I'm not going to leave you here. Like, I'm not going to leave you like this. Let's go do this. Let's get healthy, you know? And that's when we got online and saw APN, and by the next Monday morning, I was here.
What an incredible story.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, first, it's like amazing that the relationship that you have with your brother, that you were able to be vulnerable enough to call him and ask for help. Because I think that a lot of people have, you know, there's a challenge in that where people are afraid to ask for help. So I commend you for picking up the phone and asking for it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I couldn't have done this without my older brother, Jake. So, Jake, love you, man.
Yeah, shout out, Jake.
Appreciate you so much. Couldn't have done any of this without you.
Powerful.
Yeah. And talking about, like, these level of episodes that you were having, and you talked about, like, that year leading up to APN, where do you think they came from? Was it, like, the time in the service or at the Air Force, or was it were you dealing with these type of things in your childhood? Like, where did they come from, do you think?
I'd say most of it comes from childhood things that I had no memory of before then.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like going back to those moments and having flashbacks and just being overwhelmed. But also, it's the things that carried on that I didn't understand the level of stress that I was always under. I had just kind of gotten to the point where I felt like, oh, this is just a part of me. Like, I get really anxious when I'm around people. I get really anxious when I have to speak in front of people, and like I was in a career where I was getting paid to go talk to people in sales, and I still am.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought that's just something that I have to deal with.
It's like you learn to live in that like high level of like anxiety, like kind of intense moment. And that's like, in a moment, it's okay to be in that situation, right, or feel that. But like to live in that, that's exhausting. You know, and it's impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah, and that's really what impacted my marriage, because it took all my energy just to work, and then on the weekends I could barely get out of bed. And I thought that was just going to be normal for me, but it's not. It's not. It's not normal at all. It's not the way we were meant to function or be.
No.
Yeah, I could relate to a lot of it. I was in sales for a long period of my life, and I always felt like the adrenaline, right? Like, you're supposed to have this like high adrenaline and feel nerves and feel anxious like all the time, when at the end of the day, you're probably not supposed to feel like that. You're probably supposed to feel like a normal job in doing it.
Yeah.
So you make the call with your brother. He dropped you off. You mentioned Jake.
Yeah, Jake and my little brother came along too. Shout out to Andrew.
Andrew and Jake.
Andrew came up with him, and I mean, guys, like, I hadn't slept for like 3 nights, and
brutal. That's the worst.
I literally was like, Andrew, can I get in bed with you? It was like being a little kid again. I slept with my brother. I slept with my brother in bed.
That's awesome.
The night before they brought me here, and finally got a night's sleep.
And then, so let's talk about, like, you get up to APN, and let's go into that experience.
Yeah, like, what was your first coming in the doors? Like, what was the thought process? Like, did you know what you were getting into? Were you like, you know, like, yeah, lead us down that road.
Yeah, it was just an act of faith. I was kind of at a place where I was just desperate for change, and it was like, I'm going to tell the truth about everything. You know, I'm gonna be honest, open about everything. And coming in, there was also a part of this is being an institution. It's like not having, hard to trust that, hey, people here have my best interests at heart. They're going to try to understand me, and we're both going to trust each other. And it was just really focusing on, I'm going to trust that people are here to help me, you know? People are not here to judge me, shame me, make me feel bad about being here. It's about me getting help and trusting that, you know, people are here to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because I believe, and I don't know this to be a fact, but I think a lot of people go through that same thought process. They're not accustomed to asking for help, and then when they get to a point where they're ready to do it, they get to a vulnerable stage where they don't necessarily believe that people aren't going to judge them. They're getting so vulnerable. It's like, well, I'm ready to do it, but what happens if that person is going to judge me for it or whatnot? So I think you almost have to go out on a limb and believe that the people that you're surrounding yourself with are going to be there to help.
And on that note, there's thousands of people in the world that'll never come to a place like APN or any other facility because of that idea that's made up, like, hey, I can't ask for help, or hey, these people don't have my best interest. And the fact that, you know, all three of us at some point in our lives were able to like kind of take that risk and take that leap of faith is huge. It's like monumental, right? So like for you to take that, again, it's not easy, and it's not like, oh, well, just ask for help. Like, that shit's hard. You know what I mean? So to come in and be able to like jump in with 2 feet and trust the process is like, hey, tip the cap. You know what I mean? That's good for you.
Absolutely. And I will say, you know, when I tell my story, sometimes people are like, you're courageous. And I'm like, no, I just got desperate to live the life that I knew was possible.
The gift of desperation. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what was the experience like in APN?
Yeah.
So like what was it like getting adjusted to the process groups? Mm-hmm. What was your relationship like with your therapist, with the community here?
Ooh. Yeah, it's like when you ask the question, it's like going back and like reliving different moments. It's like, I gotta take a deep breath real quick. But I remember the first day being pretty standoffish. I was like, how are people gonna react when I'm a little standoffish, I'm like a little, critical, asking different questions about different things, just wanting to be like, is this gonna be a place where I can feel safe? Like I remember the first day at lunch, walking in with one of the Jess. I don't know if she's still around, but she took really good care of me that first day, and she was really understanding. But I walked in, and there were a group of guys that invited me to come sit with them, and I was like, "No, I'm good, guys." Like I just needed a little space just to breathe and settle in. But it took me a good week to settle in. I had trouble sleeping the first week.
Natural there.
Yeah, and there were just a lot of nights where I had to go come downstairs in the lobby, just get that fresh air and just breathe. Like there were nights where I was just box breathing, being like, wow, like what is happening? Like there were times when I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, I'm really here.
Yeah.
And like I'm really doing this right now. So it definitely took about a week to just settle in. But after going to my process groups and really getting a lot out of them, even in that first week when like I wasn't sleeping very well, and seeing the caliber of like therapists that we have, he's amazing, Dr. Seeley, and having that caliber of person, and then seeing the amount of connection that was going on in that group, it was like, wow, I'm gonna do some real stuff here. And then, I'd say one of the biggest impacts of being here is the people that you meet that are going through common things, and you're like, you're just like my neighbors, you're just like the people I work with, and creating those relationships where you feel safe to share your life. And like here, when you're going through that kind of stuff with people, like it's like within a couple days you feel like you've known them their whole life.
Yeah, it's powerful.
They become brothers.
So Dan and I this morning, we were actually having this conversation with the difference between group therapy and individual therapy, and how a lot of people, when we come in, everybody's like, hey, I want 8 individuals a day, right? Well, I want to talk, but then the power of the group setting and being able to share and be vulnerable and talk about stuff. You're like, I'll never talk about this in front of anybody. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks or 2 weeks into my stay, I feel so comfortable in that group setting. I'm telling my peers, my brothers, almost all this stuff that I would never tell anybody before. So how did you feel in that group setting, and like how powerful was it for you?
Yeah, in that first week, people gave me a lot of love, and because I was standoffish in group initially, and people opened up their hearts, and I settled in, and it was like, wow, just the amount that I can learn from different people when I open up my heart, and take feedback. I think there's different connections. What's amazing is the different connections you can make listening to other people's stories, because it's like, wow, like I felt that way and I completely get that. And it's like something in your subconscious mind clicks too.
Yeah.
And it's like you take a deep breath and you're like, wow, like life will never be the same because I understand this, and this is completely self-evident because of this experience with other people.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the big thing that came across is how powerful we can be for each other.
Absolutely.
No, and I don't think people understand that until they actually go through it, because, again, you mentioned when you're first asked for support, you're almost in a place of like embarrassment. And you get to a level of trust where it's like, okay, I need to talk to a therapist, a professional, and I know that I have this client patient confidentiality, and they're like, I know that if I say this, no one else is going to hear it. I don't have to be embarrassed, and I'm not going to feel judged. And then you go into a point where it's like, okay, we're going to do group therapy, and you get like, you don't want to be vulnerable because you're scared about being judged. But meanwhile, that person sitting next to you may have gone through that exact experience, and it almost will validate you feeling that way. So it kind of like removes that judgment, and they might have had an experience where they could help you through it. And so it's like some people don't understand that, and until they go through it. And I think that the group therapy is just as important as the one-on-one.
Yeah, I'd say it's just as important, or more. Like if I had to pick one or the other, the group therapy every day, that became like, I would not miss that.
Yeah,
I would not miss that. It became like sacred for me.
It's almost that feeling of part of a team too. Like we all want to be like connected with we have family, but like having that, that special connection with a bunch of guys that have been through the same similar things, but have had a lot of the same thoughts. And hey, maybe this person's from Florida and that person's from New Jersey, or this person's from Connecticut or California, but we've thought the same in similar ways, and we've struggled with similar demons or issues, whatever you want to say. And now we're all here together working our ass off to get better. And there's something in that's, it's like explaining to somebody what a rose smells like and they've never seen or smelled a rose. It's impossible to describe how powerful it is, but there's real power in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were also in the professionals track while you were here?
Yeah. I switched. I think I got in like the last 4 weeks that I was here. I was in the professionals group.
And how was that?
Yeah, how'd that go?
I really appreciated Dr. Celia and Lana. And it was good for me to be around. I think there's been times where I get self-conscious about where I've been professionally and my kind of trajectory with that, and being around people that are operating at a high level, I think that was just another thing that I guess there was probably like just some confidence building through that, and being able to have conversations about the professional environment, and also be able to bring in struggles, challenges, and that sort of deal, and just get comfortable in my own skin. Hey, I've had this experience. That doesn't make me a bad person.
Yeah.
It makes me a person that's experienced some challenges, but it doesn't mean anything about me, like that I'm not a flawed human being. I'm just like anybody else,
100%. I do remember meeting you for the first time when I was up here, and I remember the presence that you had, and how well respected you were amongst your peers. And I think I was even here when you did your graduation and you kind of got your backpack and and people were talking about you. And one of the things that stuck out to me that I do remember was, I'm gonna mess up the quote here, but when people were talking about how much they enjoyed speaking to you, like they looked forward to seeing you at breakfast in the morning, and you were always the first person to say like, hey, how was your day yesterday? Checking in on the community when people are looking for that. And some people are, and it's not to say that like the rest of the community doesn't do that, but it was front of mind for you. You were always going out of your way to talk to others to make sure that they were feeling comfortable, and if they needed anything, you were there to support. And I think that just shows what type of individual you are.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It was actually kind of overwhelming to get. I was like, when are they going to let me sit down? Everybody in the whole room, was saying stuff, and even people that I didn't even spend that much time with were still like really impacted when we'd have one, conversation when we sat together at a meal. And I think there was a part of me that opened up a couple weeks into it. Like my heart was opening up, and it was almost like feeling like a little kid again. Like I want to just connect with people, and like it's I want to take advantage of being around other people that are opening up their heart and healing.
Yeah. So you mentioned Dr. Celia earlier, but I'd also like to hear, and I think you mentioned Jennifer or Jessica earlier, but like mention some other staff maybe that might have made an impact, whether it was a nurse, whether it was hospitality or CSA or case management. Was there any other staff while you were here that really like, holy shit, that person really helped me out? Or was it a collective, like the whole unit you kind of leaned on at times?
I would say it was the collective.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it was the collective, and getting to a place where, like, there were some times where I'd just be down in the living room and I'd just close my eyes and listen to everybody talking and moving around and just kind of feel into my nervous system and be like, I've been on edge my whole life. Like, I've been living on edge, like always hyper vigilant, like who's around, worried about what I'm going to say because of what somebody's going to think about me. And I think it was just, it was definitely the collective, and being able to just breathe into that new sense of safety. Like, I'm safe in my body, I'm safe around these people, and actually I can create a world when I go home where I feel the exact same way. But yeah, there were times where I would just go close my eyes and sit on the couch and listen to everybody and just soak it in.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a very cool environment to be in, and whether or not you're laying on the couch listening, or if you're actually active and talking to others, it's a safe environment and almost like a freeing environment to be amongst. So I could definitely relate. Now diving into a little bit of like, you're leaving APN now. You have a wife and child at home. How were you able to manage those relationships and utilize the tools that you learned at APN in your everyday life, especially going back to working as well?
Yeah. Well, that's another thing I want to mention in all this too it was a real leap of faith for me coming here. And one of the first things I did is I called one of our executives at my company, and I was like, I'm just going to tell them what's going on. I'm going to just tell them what's going on. Not expecting maybe I have to go find a job after this, but that's worth it. But I was blown away that when you tell the truth,
I get it.
Where people meet you.
Yeah.
Where people meet you.
People are supportive.
Yeah, I mean, I was here a couple weeks, and I got blown up by different executives at our company, and they were like, man, we love you. Get well. We want you back. You built businesses for us, and come back when you're healthy. And it was just another deep breath, feeling safer in my body.
Mm-hmm.
But leaving was challenging. A part of me was like, maybe I should have stayed another 30 days. I think that first week was definitely tough because the environment triggers you to feel different things. So like going home for the first time, it like triggers like, well, how you kind of feel home when you get home from work or something, pulling into the garage. It's like it triggers like, and I just had to, I'd actually think about different times when I was here, like centering myself and grounding myself. There was a place that I like to go, the Overlook, like go to the Overlook, but I just breathe and be like, I'm still safe. I'm still safe. This is real.
Yeah.
This is real.
And how is it like rejoining your family, your wife, your kid, and seeing them since you've been back?
In a lot of ways, when I'm around my son, especially, it's almost like, I hate to say it, I feel like I missed out on a lot of time before because like I just feel more present. And it's like I'm really there soaking up the time.
Incredible.
So
thank God you came, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So there's definitely a new feeling of safety that enables me to be more emotionally present with people. Yeah.
No, I could relate a lot. I think where I live now on the West Coast, my family's on the East Coast, when I show up, I'm like fully present, and I never felt like I was there as present I am. So like it almost makes it more fun and exciting for me because I'm not like missing anything, and I'm like can understand and be there for them.
The other thing about that concept is like we don't even know that that's something that we were missing. Like if you told me before I got sober and working on myself, like, oh, you'll have some peace and some gratitude, I'm like, what are you talking about? But when you get it, you're like, oh. This is what I've been looking. It's brand new to us. So for you to experience that with your kids, with your wife, with your boss, internally, like it's huge. You know what I mean? Then
it's everything.
It's everything.
It's everything because we tolerate so much. Like we tolerate so much stress, so much being disconnected from other people, and it's actually amazing to me what we tolerate in our everyday lives. When there's so much more possible and available to us.
So much relief out there. Just got to tap into it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just finding people that you feel safe with and that you can be real with.
Since you've come home, did you have any discussions with your family about why you needed to get away, or have they seen a difference since you've been home?
Yeah, I guess we'd have to pull Abby in here. She's out there. We can pull her in. But there's definitely, over the past year, I kind of was like, I'm going all in on figuring some of it out. I don't think I ever figure it out. I don't think we ever arrive someplace. I don't think the work ever ends. But I think there's different anchor points that happen, over the course of a lifetime if you're consciously aware and pursuing a higher level of connection and love and peace and joy and compassion. I think there's different anchor points that happen along the way. And actually, one of the more special moments was when Abby called me one day on the phone, and she's just like, "You're a different person."
Wow.
And what's going on? Like, what's really happening? There was a point in time, I've over the years, there have been periods of time where I don't talk to my folks very often, if at all. And I was out to a lunch with Abby, my better half, and I was hanging up the phone with my mom. I said, "I love you, Mom." Abby looks at me like, just because of the tone of my voice and the just what she felt in that moment, and she's like, "What's happening? Like, what's happening?" And I'm like, this is what's possible. Like, this is what's possible when we open up our hearts and lean into some uncomfortable areas and learn about ourselves and stop judging ourselves and stop being so critical with ourselves.
So I also have a question too about now that, right, we leave APN, are there certain things that you've taken as like tools? So like, hey, where if I start to feel overwhelmed or if I feel overly excited or anxious, like what are some tools that you almost see yourself using on a day-to-day, whether you talked about box breathing, whether it's meditation or it's journaling or it's reaching out to peers, like what are some of the tools that you're implementing in your life?
Yeah, it's definitely, and that's the other impression I don't want to get. Like, I still have a lot of challenges.
Right.
When I wake up in the mornings, there's some mornings where, it's like going back in time and having feeling a little sadness, feeling a little regret, and for me, it's being able to sit with it, and be like, hey, this makes sense. It's okay to feel that way too. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything about you either, Yeah. And then it's like, I can journal about it. I can write a bit about it. And I'm finding most of it comes from shame. Yeah. Most of it's shame. Like even sadness and anxiety and these other feelings, most of it's coming from some shame that I've held on to for a long time. But as I become more aware of it and I can sit in it and be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't want that anymore. So what are we going to choose today?
Totally.
What are we going to choose today? Like Viktor Frankl said, he wrote I think it's Man's Search for Meaning. He went through the Holocaust, but he has a quote that says, there's a space between stimulus and response where we get to make a choice. And I feel like the work that we do here at APN, the work that other people do in this space, it's about being able to be in that space and choose what you know is possible and available.
Love that.
Totally. Well, I guess the last thing that I have for you is if you had the ability to tell yourself something prior to going APN and during your struggles, or to someone else that was going through something similar to you, what would you tell them or you?
Yeah. I'd say there's nothing wrong with you at all. I'd say that probably anybody else that had been born like you and gone through the different experiences that you faced would probably feel the same way. And there's nothing wrong about the way you feel. It just is. And as much as you can try to be objective with yourself and look at it without judgment and open up. Share what's actually going on. I'd say some of the times that I got the most out of group therapy and then meetings with Dr. Seeley, who's like a ninja, is when I push myself to be like, they're not judging me. I mean, we all judge, but people make a choice too. Like, you get to choose love within that and meet people at a place where it's like, we're helping you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Difference between judgmental and judging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'd say open up. That there's a lot more possible on the other side of this, and it's something that you can continue to pursue the rest of your life. But the first thing is to know that nothing's wrong with you, nothing's wrong with me, nothing was wrong with me. There's nothing the matter with getting help. I think anybody in our society, in this country, would benefit from 30 days at a place like APN. I don't care if you're struggling or you think you're struggling with anything. So don't feel like there's something wrong with you being here. You aren't weak because you're here. You're actually really strong. You're actually really strong, and take advantage of the time to be in a space where you can cultivate what I think is possible.
100%, man. And I appreciate you opening up like that. And I think that's an amazing message.
Yeah, I agree. It went back to your shame idea too. Like, hey, it's all that shame. If I say this, I'm weak, or if I'm this, I'm that. It's all horseshit. It
is.
Yeah.
No, and I agree with you at the last thing you said. Like, anyone could benefit from this. I think that everyone has their own struggles in life, whether it be a mental health or a substance abuse issue or anything in life. They always have the ability to make themselves better. No one's ever perfect, and to give yourself the opportunity to work on yourself, to better yourself, why not take it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, we appreciate you coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
You did an amazing job. I think your story could definitely touch a lot of individuals out there. So thank you. And just to see you here sitting across from me versus when I first met you at the lodge, man, like, you've changed a lot, and I want to say that, like, you deserve a lot of credit, and you should be proud of yourself.
Thanks so much, man. It's been healing to have this talk with you guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
It's been healing to breathe into that and be like, wow, this is really real.
Yeah.
Like, this is real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to like take stock how often of how much progress or how healing this was, but it's cool to know that at the end of the episode you're feeling even this have an effect. You seem to have, or it sounds like you had a very close relationship with your brothers on your way in, and they were there for you and helped support in that way. How is the relationship now? And, you know, it sounds like you've had earlier life traumas. Did they share those traumas, and would you encourage them to come here, or just what is that communication looking like nowadays?
Yeah, one of the most awesome things that's happened as a result of me opening up with my older brother, and not saying that he has the exact same challenges as me. His life is very different. But he's also raised his hand and gotten help. And I'd say back in December, there was a phone call that we had with each other where there was just an amount of vulnerability and connection around our lives and what was going on that I never thought was going to be possible with my family. And it's opened up some spaces that is... it just felt really good. It felt really safe. It was like, wow, I never thought this was going to be possible to share these insecurities with my older brother, and for him to vice versa share the things that's going on in his life. You know, I think he's like 7 years older than me, and I think a lot of times he's felt the pressure that he has to be perfect. You know, he's got to have everything together, and for him to share, like, Steven, like, you opening up and sharing your story with me has inspired me to move into some places where I want to open up my heart more. And so that's been awesome.
That's what it's about. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know, you talk about the healing power of sharing the story and group therapy and all that, and even that discussion with your brother. I mean, that's kind of the core value that this podcast is built around, is sharing your story and helping others. How do you feel about the fact that this is probably going to reach a lot of people that it might help?
It feels good. I mean, and the other thing is, yeah, it feels like a lot of what I've done has been worth it if I can share my story and somebody out there it lands with and they resonate with some of it. That would be incredible. It also feels really good for me to be able to share my story and it be a story, you know? It actually feel like a story, not my present reality. It's a story. It's things that happen to me, but it doesn't define how I feel in this moment or the way I'm going to experience the rest of my life.
There's so much power in the story. You know what I mean? It's like anecdotal society. You know what I mean? Like in just passing that message down, and then we inspire other people, and then they inspire other people, and that's just the way this goes. And it's powerful. And like Dan said, we're so grateful that you came and sat with us and shared your story with us, and now that can be helpful to people moving forward for years.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, man. Appreciate it. For those out there, if you want to see other episodes of Recovery APN, please visit us at apn.com/podcast. Again, that's apn.com/podcast. If you do want to get in touch with us, feel free to email us at that's pod@apn.com, pod@apn.com. Please feel free to follow us on our social accounts, LinkedIn and Instagram. APN, the handle is APN Lodge, and feel free to like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you again for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.